Gris is a heartfelt and ethereal odyssey through the 5 stages of grief. Although we all deal with pain in our own way, these stages are common when facing the loss of a loved one. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Processing our feelings can be difficult, and this is where gaming is the perfect medium. I like to stress the educational value of the games we play. We can learn how mental health changes the way we see the world, help us better understand who we are, how grief shapes our perceptions of reality. Gris illuminates how we feel after the death of a loved one in a unique and captivating way. Dialogue is non-existent in this game. Everything is told through subtle art choices and game design. Even the title Gris means gray, which is significant in the narrative. The attention to detail is stunning, but I'd expect no less from Devolver Studios. So today, I wanted to break down the psychology in Gris, share my own experiences with loss, and explain why this game is a good tool to process emotions. I'm Very. If you enjoy this content, like and share with your friends. Also, don't forget to hit that sub and notification bell so you'll always see my latest content. Just to be clear, this is my interpretation of the story. I wanted to go in blind, so I didn't read anything about the game. We play as Gris, a young girl who is struggling with loss. She loses her beautiful voice after what seems like the death of a relative. I'm going to assume for this video, it's her mother, but it could be her girlfriend or friend in general. I feel like in the games, she's portrayed as a very motherly figure, Gris looking up to her for guidance. But again, this is my interpretation. After losing her voice, she falls into the unknown. She travels through mysterious lands, beginning to understand her emotions better. Every area brings a new challenge to overcome, increasing in difficulty over time. Similar to how processing grief is usually an uphill battle. After losing someone we care about, it can feel like our sense of self or voice has been stripped from us. However, as time goes on, the emotions become more manageable to process. Gris grieves for her mother, but with each tear, her emotions resolve, which is a quick tangent, showcases the power of letting our feelings out. Crying helps us process emotions and cope with life's difficulties. Gris couldn't have emotional resolution without feeling pain. Running from our darkest thoughts can be gratifying at the time, I know from experience. However, it's not a healthy long-term solution. Going through the stages of grief ultimately makes us healthier. Gris battles these emotions, but realizes they serve a necessary part of her rehabilitation process. When she finally passes through all 5 stages, she lets go of her mother. Instead of trying to hold on to the past, she gives the memory of her mom a goodbye kiss. Now that we've broken down the plot, let's talk about the 5 stages of grief generally, then we will go over each section of the game. Kubler-Ross worked with the terminally ill until she realized similarities in people's experiences. She made a guide that broke down the general trends from people who are facing the death of a loved one, known as the Kubler-Ross model. Although this model can be a bit simplistic at times, it generally does a great job of breaking down grief. First comes denial. The death of someone we love is a traumatic experience. Sometimes, our brain takes a while to process these feelings, so our mind denies the existence of loss to cope for the time being. Then comes anger. Where denial can be more difficult to understand, anger is very recognizable. We might feel frustrated or even enraged that we had no say in what happened to the person we care about. After anger comes bargaining. In this stage, we might beg or plead that the universe brings back the person we love, sacrificing anything to see them one more time. Then depression hits. For a lot of people, this is the hardest step in the process, and rightfully so. After we begin to realize that someone we love is gone forever, things become difficult. The depressive stage can vary a lot in how it looks, depending on everyone's unique experience. Yet sadness and pain are necessary components of the healing process. After the wound stops festering, it can begin to heal. This is where acceptance comes in. In this stage, we can be at peace with our emotions. Instead of feeling sad about losing someone close to us, we can feel happy that we had the chance to meet them at all. Gris is such a touching game for me because it embodied my experience with loss exceptionally well. My mother passed away 2 years ago from cancer. Considering she was a heavy smoker, it should be expected, but I was definitely caught off guard. Something Gris excels at is showing us how fast life can change. The beginning of the game starts with an abrupt loss, similar to the way life can take people unexpectedly. For me, I skipped the first 3 stages. I accepted my mom's death in a physical sense, but not emotionally. The 4th stage was definitely rough. Having someone you're so close with being taken so abruptly is saddening on an indescribable level. Gris represents depression, similar to how I felt for a while, drowning in feelings, swimming in darkness to find meaning. However, the last stage is where I got true clarity. Understanding the limited nature of my relationships helped me to value them on a deeper level. While things look a lot different, by processing my grief, I feel like the connection I have with my mom has deepened. Now to begin with the first area in Gris, the Land of Denial. In the beginning, she is crushed to the point where she can barely move, unable to find meaning or her voice. This region's primary colors consist of black, white, and gray. I believe this is intentful, considering the ways people process grief. Denial is sometimes the hardest stage for people, because it's when feelings are the most poignant. Gris seems distraught after her loss, so she sees the world in black and white. No feelings or emotions to process at this point in time, only nothingness. The buildings and structures illustrate denial as well. Everything is crumbling, on the verge of destruction, yet still currently intact. When we ignore or push away our feelings, they eventually come to a breaking point. Starting the game off quietly is also an excellent touch. When someone we love dies, the world becomes silent. We focus almost exclusively on this event, or at least I did. All the ambient noise we are used to fades into the background. Not to mention the music sounds introspective. This is another common phenomenon in the denial stage. We often have to introspect a tremendous amount to better understand what's going on. As Gris continues through denial, the surrounding areas look obliterated now. She's breaking down her barrier, so to speak. The ruin is more apparent because reality is finally starting to hit her. Once she begins to cry and release her stored anguish, then we transition to the next stage. Anger is one of the most accurate depictions of emotions in gaming. I think the experience of these stages is shown in the game world as well. In denial, things are pretty straightforward and short, but in the anger section, things become more complex to navigate. This is because our bodies start to process how we feel. We might seem calm in one moment and furious in the next. The color, music, and background encapsulate anger perfectly. Let's start with the color. Everything in this section is red. This color is usually used to depict anger because people can sometimes see red when enraged. The color choice, accompanied by a stellar soundtrack, helps set the furious tone. When Gris feels angry, the organ notes play, getting more intense as we progress the narrative. Plus, fury tends to come in waves, not all at once. But where the anger section thrives is in its world design. The wind and background showcase how a lot of people feel after someone they love dies. Rage is usually a harmful feeling for both our body and mind. When we get mad, our body feels like it's fighting itself. We tense up and struggle to remain composed. Not to mention the background. When the wind smacks our hero, the imagery begins to look like a war zone. Again, harkening back to the idea of anger being a battle. She constantly fights anger until she learns how to process it. This has to be one of the most magical areas in the game. I was expecting bargaining to be more dreary given the context of the game so far. However, this area is bright and vibrant, wildlife all around, a tranquil serenity after the furious storm. Bargaining is shown through working with a little stone creature that likes apples. I'm weird, so I named him Apple Eater. At first, I was confused, but the narrative chooses a different way to show bargaining. The game subverts expectations a lot in this awesome section. Usually, bargaining is portrayed to begging to God or the universe for the resurrection of someone dear to us. But Gris shows this interaction in a more subtle, transactional way. We have to help this little stone creature to get what we want. Little Apple Eater becomes our friend to some extent. Bargaining is unique in that it's a more positive emotion in the stages of grief. Instead of denying our emotions or getting furious, we are reaching out to find help. Expressing how much we care about the person by understanding the sacrifices we would make for them. This positivity is shown in the natural elements of this section. We see luscious environments, brimming with color and happiness, little creatures frolicking without a care in the world. Plus the green color scheme seems like a great choice for bargaining. Green is a calming color because of its association with nature, signifying this is part of the natural process of grieving, also illustrating the calm before the storm. We need something uplifting before accepting our darkest feelings. Even the music is calming and non-assertive. Our little pal cheers us up as they guide us along. When you're forced to part ways with Apple Eater, it can feel similar to leaving the bargaining stage. We have to leave behind the thought something miraculous will change, in the same way we leave our stone friend. Goodbye, sweet Apple Eater. This has to be one of the angstiest video game areas ever, and I'm here for it. The first thing that stands out in the depression section of the game is the world design. We start with rain everywhere. The pain that Gris has in her heart comes to physical form. So much anguish that the tears pool up in the environment. As we traverse the depths of her pain, things become dark and icy. frozen, just like our hearts can feel after we lose everything. For me, this was the most difficult stage in the grief model. I remembered all the good times I had with my mom, saddened that we couldn't have more time together. In Gris, we continue down into the depths, drowning in sorrow and pain because of how much the relationship means. Water is very important in conveying how Gris feels. A common experience when overwhelmed with emotions is to feel like we are drowning. Everything is too much, it's suffocating. Another property of water is that it can take on different forms. In the same way our sadness can change depending on how we feel, when Gris is really upset, things are dark and icy. But when she's less agitated, her emotions flow like water. Music also sets the mood masterfully. A depressing song with a twinge of hope in it. The color design adds so much to this area. The light blue of the tier platforms, the dark blue of the water. To me, this represents a variety of sad feelings. We go through a range of emotions, even inside the 5 stages. One memory might be a happy sad memory, whereas another one is soul-crushingly difficult. The variety is shown wonderfully in the different variations of blue. I also like how in this section, we constantly move downwards, getting to the root of our darkest thoughts, slowly accepting these overwhelming feelings. Depression has a negative connotation in society, but it's very meaningful for a lot of people. Feelings of sadness and pain help cultivate empathy and understanding. When a close friend has a family member who dies, experiencing the pain firsthand gives us more insight into how to help them heal. Skipping this step would skip the whole point of the 5 stages. Accepting the full range of our emotions is the healthiest thing we can do in the healing process. After the darkness comes the dawn. The last area of Gris is the most rewarding to me. Through all of the suffering and hardship, we get a beautiful send-off. Gris finds the strength to rekindle her voice. Music is everything in the acceptance area of the game. We hear a hauntingly futuristic song that sounds like an expansion of perspective, slowly guiding us on our journey. The stars and moon in the background are ever-reaching. Now that our feelings are in check, we feel as though the universe is the limit. Once she learns how to use her voice, the entire map springs to life. Yellow is also a great choice to portray acceptance, because it gives off warmth and vibrance missing from the other sections of the game. Something people might not realize, the end of depression doesn't mean the start of acceptance necessarily. We would imagine in this section, we wouldn't have any challenges or puzzles, because the climax was depression, right? Well, not exactly. This area of the game is pretty difficult and long. Just because we are no longer sad, doesn't mean we accept the person is gone forever. This stage, in my opinion, takes the most work to pass. Our hero's feelings are almost resolved, until she has a relapse. Gris is consumed by darkness, but the new way she feels about the death of her mother gives her the strength to persevere. Gris lets her mom go, by appreciating the new relationship she has with her. The last thing I want to break down today is the game design in Gris. The gameplay choices mirror psychology. Initially, we get the strength to walk. Many of us feel catatonic after the death of someone we love. Even though walking is something we take for granted, it's definitely a power-up for those who are unable to. Then we get the block form in the anger section. We can build up our resistance to angry feelings by working through them, anchoring ourselves to something more healthy. Once we reach Apple Eater, we learn how to float through the air. This power, I believe, comes from our lightness following the first 2 stages. After dealing with denial and anger, things feel great compared to before, like we are floating on a cloud. For the depression section, I don't think the power you obtain is as relevant as the game design. In this section, we solve problems by manipulating water. Our emotions are constantly in flux. How we choose to interact with emotions impacts our perceptions of reality. Sometimes to work through our sadness, we need to manipulate our feelings to make them more manageable. Depression in particular can feel like water. One moment, things are going well, calm like a river. Out of nowhere, an icy storm hits. Feelings of sadness and loss in an ocean of despair. Although, once we learn how to manipulate the water, then we come to acceptance. The game design choices in this area are the most meaningful to me. Something is empowering about the idea of reclaiming your voice, using it to bring to life feelings that were dead before. The consistency of game design is awesome too. Some games will give you cool powers for them to become obsolete in later sections of the journey. In Gris, every component is necessary to move the narrative. Even if we understand our depressive feelings, we still need a healthy relationship with anger to process the later sections of the game. In this game, abilities don't become obsolete, because they are a meaningful part of healing. Thanks for checking out this video. Gris embodies the educational value of games. We can learn so much about how we feel and why when gaming. It's important to understand and utilize all of our emotions when faced with adversity. Truly accepting the loss of a loved one is exceedingly difficult. We can feel alone and scared, but in the pain and suffering, there is a lot of perspective to gain. Mental health conversations are something we need to have more often, and I'm really happy that games like Gris exist. If you'd like to share your experiences with Gris or loss, I'd love to hear your story.